Welcome to the Connected Enterprise Podcast. This is Carl Lewis, your host from Vision33, and my guest today is my good, and I guess we would say old friend at this stage, after so many years, Mark Loveys from Datagate. Mark, welcome back. It's been, we were just talking about 19 months. I had you on as a guest on the podcast before, and we sort of had a conversation a few days ago and said, I've got to get him back on and just talk about what we've all been through. Because we talked the last time on the podcast early in the pandemic, and I don't think anybody knew what we were going to go through. So today I just wanted to talk with you about where have we been, what are we going through right now, and have we learned anything in the process? So Mark, but please start off by telling folks a little bit about yourself, remind them who you are and what Datagate is all about.
Well, thank you, Carl. It's great to be back and great to be talking with you again. My background is I've worked in the software business since the 1980s, seen a lot of changes. I'm very passionate, just like the folk are at Vision33, about the software business and what it can do for people, for businesses. And my current company is called Datagate, and our specialty is enabling managed service providers to produce telecom invoices. Now, I know that sounds like a sort of a fairly plain sort of subject, but it's actually one that's come into its own recently because we've seen phones and computers become the same thing. And what that means is that there's now a big opportunity for managed service providers or people who work with computers to now provide phone systems. And doing that, you need a special kind of invoicing. You need to handle the tax and compliance side of things. And it's a specialty that we really focus on. And actually what's been happening recently has made that focus even more relevant, in the industry as more MSPs and IT companies are getting into the telecom side of things. So yeah, it's great to be back. Yeah, we've certainly, things have changed since you and I last spoke. It started, I guess, in our company of Datagate to spread the company out more internationally, more geographically. We were really relying on the cloud software that we were using internally and still use. And that was enabling us to really, act as an international business. But at that time, we still had offices. We still had people working from offices, and we had no idea what was about to unfold, I guess, on the world.
No, Mark, had you already moved to Vancouver at that point? I don't remember, or was
only
that
just
after?
Actually?
Yeah, just been there. That's what I
thought.
Yeah,
that interview was literally done from a hotel room. We were still finding a place to live, and so it was. And I guess what we were doing was completely sort of enabled by the fact that all our systems and processes at Datagate were cloud-based, so we could operate from anywhere. And at that time, it was sort of a luxury that we could expand out. We could involve people in our business from any location. I think what we saw was that we were serving an industry, the managed service provider industry, that at that time was fairly busy because companies were seeing the advantages of cloud-based phone systems. Just like all throughout the computer industry, the cloud is sort of taking everything over. But in the phone industry, it brought all sorts of economics to phone systems, more flexible, lower cost, and able to be reconfigured and centrally managed, without reliance on geography. Then I think when COVID hit, suddenly things took on a new level of urgency, and our industry, I guess the managed service provider, MSP industry as we call it, suddenly was under a lot of demand to help businesses to cope with this new environment, to be able to enable their workers to work remotely. And remote working suddenly went from being a luxury to being a necessity. That suddenly businesses and essential services could not operate without the phone systems and computer systems that they need. And so our industry was under heavy demand, and so we saw situations where our clients were working long hours. They really needed the automation that we were giving them in our cloud software, where Datagate could handle the telecom billing fairly automatically, which we do, and that special kind of phone bills, and we saw the uptake of cloud phone systems just go through the roof, really, because they're so much better in a distributed environment where people are working from all different locations. So it was an interesting time.
That's one of sort of the it's an obvious but I think very, very important observation that because many people, I think, before this, you were reluctant about the cloud, right?
Exactly.
Still sort of holding off on cloud places for their ERP systems, cloud places for every system, basically, you can think of these days.
Yeah.
And now I think a lot of people are going, you know what, the cloud kind of proved itself because of the pandemic, putting us all in this vice.
Absolutely.
I mean, so basically today, I mean, do you have any offices actually for your operations today, or is everybody working from an apartment someplace?
Good question, and the answer is we actually relinquished our offices. I put the word out to our team, and I said, "How are you all managing working from home, and what do you think, and how well is it working?" And everybody came back saying, "Actually, we prefer this. We're more productive." I noticed our productivity went up a lot, and so the interesting thing became that actually a lot of our people started to work too much. Almost, it was like we almost had the opposite problem of productivity. It was like, we want our people to be healthy as well. When you're working from home, it's so easy to work all the time. When do you stop? And so that's been a bit of a concern. Another concern would be people just taking vacations and having a break. I think a lot of us have, in the various geographies that we live in, have had all sorts of restrictions on us, and have not been able to travel and do a lot of things we used to take for granted. And so we're sort of now getting to the stage where we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I can foresee a lot of people wanting to take some time out and do vacations and that sort of thing. So there's some really interesting unintended consequences, I think, that come from what we've all been through, and we're still going through. I shouldn't talk in the past tense, but this is still, this COVID is still happening, and it's still a major issue for all of us. I think it'd be fair to say that that COVID-19 pressed the fast forward button on the cloud. What we've seen is a rapid acceleration of the cloud becoming something that used to be, like for the people that like to live on the cutting edge and be ahead of technology, they were cloud. Now we're seeing that it's just become an absolute essential. And in fact, it's a frightening thought to think, how would a business like ours, or how would a business like many businesses operate if it was not for cloud software? It would all come to a grinding halt if suddenly you had to go back to the office to operate something, or we're very fortunate, I guess, working in the software industry, that we can work entirely through these cloud systems. And I acknowledge not everybody can, but
yeah. If you I mean, it would be tough for retailers and others, right, to do that, but I think if you could imagine, just for everybody, what would have happened had this pandemic occurred 15 years ago? Right?
Exactly.
It would have been so much more devastating.
Yes.
Because the technology just wasn't there,
Yes.
for many people, just wasn't there. And so it would have been very, very different, and really very disastrous, beyond, some of the negative things that we experienced, for certain. So Mark, you alluded to it, but I think one of the things is, the future of work.
Yes.
There'll be a lot more remote workers, at least.
Yes.
Some of them will be in kind of a hybrid mode, where some days in the office, but more work at home, I think, is liable to go across all industries.
Absolutely.
As an owner and as an employer, I mean, it sounds like you find yourself a little bit more in the involved in being a life coach, right? With folks. Take some time off. When are you taking your vacation, right? You have to be a little more aggressive about, I know you got no place to go, but I need you to take a vacation, right?
That's right.
So what's that like? I mean, you're a likable guy. You care about people. I know that, but there had to be some, like, how do I do that, right? How do I encourage people?
I mean, that's right. It's certainly it's a fundamental fact that there's got to be some sort of work-life balance that people have. They've got to be healthy to do good work, and we all want people to thrive in this new environment. And so it's a real mix-up. I think the COVID sort of pandemic has shaken the world, shaken things up, and changed a lot of the ground rules. And some of them will be permanent changes, and some will be temporary changes. But I think the working remotely, working from home, I think it's here to stay. Some businesses it doesn't suit, some will always be location based, but so many have now moved to being working remotely. So therefore there's a whole new learning process involved working from home. Many people, some of us have been doing it for a while and have learned how to stop this completely taking over your life, and working out ways to manage teams and understand what people are doing. And you're absolutely right what you said before, Carl, that the technology has made this possible, where we can work as teams spread around the world. We can be, all using great products, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, all these products have really enabled us to keep working and stay in touch with people and have face-to-face meetings with people in totally different geographies. So, but I think in terms of, HR, employment, looking after people, it's really press the reset button. And as employers, we really have to learn how do we get the best out of this for not only our business, but also for our people as well. I think it's, as I say, with these sort of a shake-up like this, is unintended consequences that I think the world is really just starting to understand. We've seen businesses that are located in the city, downtown areas, who are saying, wow, we're seeing the number of people in the city has reduced, immensely. People are now working in outlying areas. What's that going to do, to businesses that rely on the high concentration of people? These are things you don't think about, initially when you think of a virus, but and also, I guess, the way that software companies can now become so much more specialized, and again, unintended consequence. But now we've got a world where we take for granted that people are using products like Teams and Zoom, and we can connect to people remotely. And what does that mean? It means that you can access a much bigger market, because now it's not quite so important that you're in the same town as somebody. You can reach out to somebody anywhere. So what that means is that companies like Datagate, like my own company, we can be super specialized in something, and whereas there would not be enough customers in any one particular geography to keep a specialized company like us going, we can now spread wide, and we can interact with people and sell to people that we never meet in actual person, but we can talk to them, through the net. And so it really has sort of shaken up and mixed things around. It's hurt people. It's also helped people. It's a reset of the rules. So yeah, it's it's an intriguing subject, the whole thing. And
I can attest to having that experience of working from home for a while, and kind of figured out how to not let it eat me up. I think even still, what the pandemic took away was part of the way that I managed that, because not being in an office, I learned to deal with that. All right, not so many water cooler conversations and casual things that occur, but I sort of would get my fix of that at conferences and other things where I could rub shoulders with people, and we could sit down and have a drink together and talk about each other's hobbies and things like that. I know you play music, by the way, as I do.
Yes.
And so those are going to change also as the pandemic sort of releases its grip on them. And it'll be curious to see, as I think that's one of the unknowns right now, is how fast and are there any sort of consequences to starting up events again and having people face to face.
Absolutely.
And how will people imagine that? What do you see as in terms of the future of large gatherings again?
That's right. We're seeing that in the industry that we focus on, the managed service provider industry. There are a lot of conferences normally. It's a big conference focused industry. And what we're seeing, obviously during the peak times of the pandemic, all the conferences went virtual, and that's like another whole learning exercise. And I know, I remember all the conferences that you've organized over time, Carl, that, and talking to you, how much learning there is about how to optimize it and make it work best. And I can see that virtual conferences are like a whole different, learning curve again, because you're sort of like a cross between a conference and a television show. And we've been involved in those, but now what we're seeing is sort of a hybrid conferences coming out where people say it's virtual and real. And so if you want to come virtually, you can, and if you want to go, and that again is another, it gives you a different mix of complexities. Is the virtual audience going to reduce your real audience? And also, I'm getting a lot of surveys from conference companies asking me as a business owner, how confident am I to send staff to a conference right now? And I think that's what everybody's trying to get an understanding of. I know there's a lot of businesses that are saying, no, our staff are not going to conferences until certain milestones are achieved with the virus, and others are more open and saying, yes, we're in there. And so that's what the conference organizers, I guess, are all trying to understand is what's the turnout going to be. And that's why they're surveying everybody at the moment to find out what everybody's thinking, and whether they should be a combination of real or virtual, or whether, and I think the different geographies will react differently to that question.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I wonder if that'll be part of the new, it's possible that might be part of the sort of the new requirement, right? That it be that combination.
Absolutely.
Because there's still, even in areas where the tightening down has been loosened up dramatically, there's still, members of the society who are cautious, or more cautious than their neighbors are, right? Yes. And so you see some of that. Like I was talking to a friend in Texas where there's no mask mandate, but there's still a lot of people wearing masks, and there's still some businesses requiring you to wear masks upon entering. Even travel. Some businesses like our own, for instance, in order to travel and do your work on site with a customer, you're going to need to be vaccinated, right, in order to do that. And some companies might not take that step, but that's a caution, I think, that for both the employee and the customer, that Vision 33 has enacted. How long that'll be the case, I don't know. But again, I wonder about are these changes temporary out of caution, or are they really going to be the expected performance in the future, right? Because of these things. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think technology has got a lot of opportunities to solve some of these things too. And I think it's we've seen new solutions coming out that are addressed at trying to track these things, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done. And I guess we're all sort of looking into the future now to see what do we think is going to stay and what what's going to revert back to how things used to be. I mean, certainly we've had a lot of discussion internally about the fact that a lot of our marketing, given that we haven't been able to go to conferences, we've moved a lot more into the digital space, and then for digital marketing, we've also seen, well, a lot of other companies doing the same thing, and we've had people questioning internally, well, this digital is working now. Do we need to go back to going to conferences? But I maintain very passionately that the conferences are very important. They're very, meeting people in person. That's when the best way to start business relationships, to build up a level of trust with people when you met someone in person, especially when with partner businesses that you're going to work with long term. It's great to be able to meet in person, and talk directly. I mean, web conferencing is great. It's the next best alternative, but I'm still a big believer in those conferences, and I certainly learned a lot from the conferences that you and I have met each other in over the years, Carl, and really business relationships and things that that you establish. They often go on long term, and
they really do. You were talking about the learning process. I can tell you that when you're doing a live conference, you learn quickly because everyone can get you and complain to you on site at the moment.
Yes.
With a virtual conference, it's a lot easier to hide. Yes. And there's no opportunity to sort of walk the floor as the conference director and have people accost you with, right. It would be better if, right? I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I heard that. This is great, but it would be better if.
Exactly. Absolutely. And you can't undervalue the ability to just walk up and start a casual conversation with somebody. And that's one thing I've been struggling, I guess, with the virtual conferences. They tend to be a lot more structured, and it's a bit harder to do a casual comment and start a conversation with somebody. And that's I find that's how we work a lot in the real world conferences, where someone walks past your booth and you can make some comment, start some chat, or start talking, and then suddenly you get into and understand that person and their requirements and their business. And it's something that we found very hard to do in the virtual world. The virtual world was very structured. People can talk to a booth if they press a button and say, I want to talk to this company, but that's a very formal sort of thing to do, to say, yes, I want to start a conversation. It's quite different when you're actually there in person, and conversations can start a lot more
exactly.
casual.
I used to, I've always been a fan of the technology, right? I'm kind of a gadget guy, right? So, but, I always sort of thought, well, people will buy, they might buy groceries online. They might buy stuff that comes to your door in boxes, but nobody's going to buy a big ticket item like an automobile or a new ERP system, right? Or what you guys do, and a lot of services attached in a multi-year relationship without meeting you in person. Well,
Right.
I'm cautious about my old words now because people are actually buying automobiles online and from vending machines, automobile vending machines. So, I find myself in an interesting place where I don't feel very attached yet to whatever the future is, because I just don't know. And I know that I'll never buy an automobile online. Let's put it that way. But I don't know about other people anymore. I was pretty convinced in years past, but not any longer. So
Yeah, well, that's right. It's all this rapid change, and I'm amazed at how I find all of us, the thinking changes, and even this COVID-19. I mean, who would have seen this coming? This is sort of like science fiction stuff, isn't it? Really, this is something with the whole world. We're all going through this together. It's who would have thought it? And I think the same. I look back to 9/11, other major things that have happened in my lifetime, and think I never saw that coming. I just did not. It's something that, and I guess what that's shown us is that major things can happen, and so what we know today may not always be the way things are. But I think coming back to the technology is something that really, as you said earlier on, how would we have got through this without the cloud? How would we have got the technology? But it's not only the technology in IT that we all appreciate, the technology of the people making vaccines, and the technology of the frontline workers and people who are who've put in heroic efforts to keep our society moving and operating. It's really shown us the value of people and technologies, and it's been something that and I shouldn't talk in past tense. It's still happening, but really it's in some ways great to see humanity dealing with something, and also appreciating that so many important cogs in this machine, some people playing their part, and and technology and the cloud, and I guess all the people we work with who provide solutions that have enabled essential services and businesses to keep on functioning and keep the world moving while all this is happening. I would never have appreciated this before I've now witnessed it all happening.
I agree with you. You're right. There have been very few in my lifetime. I call them tectonic events that are global in nature. There have certainly been disasters in one country or another. There have been wars that are kind of regional, but it's been a long time since the world has been fighting the same thing together.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess you have to look at that a bit with a hope that we are capable of collaborating across the globe to take care of things like a pandemic, because it requires that a great deal. If you've got a crystal ball, or a cloudy crystal ball, as I like to call them, when do you think we'll have an idea of how long will we have to be through the pandemic before we look back and we're able to categorize all the changes and the modifications, the good and the bad? Where do you think we'll be? What date do you think that is?
I'm constantly monitoring people's opinions, and I'm especially interested in when things like travel really free up around the world, because I normally travel a lot, and that's one thing I've been sort of really missing. And I think I heard someone say the other day where they think we're about halfway through this. That's some ways depressing, but some ways it's hard to say. Everybody's making predictions, but I think historians for many decades to come will look back at this era, and there'll be so many changes that happen to society. A bit like what we've seen with other major events like World War II and those sort of things, where but just the structure of the world changed. And one of the things I think that's happening and that will continue is the cloud and collaboration is going to increase. We're going to see a lot more specialization, a lot more teams working together from all sorts of different geographies, because the cloud does that. It's a unifying technology, and it's quite exciting what I think will come out of it. I really do think this is press the fast forward button on the cloud and IT and technology in general, and it's going to enable scientists from different parts of the world to work together. It's going to enable businesses to spread out and address markets all over the world faster than what was happening before. So I think the world now, it's a unifying thing in the world. It's a terrible thing that's happened to so many people. And I can't, I don't want to paint this veneer that it's, it's all good. That's far from the truth. It's hurt people, but at the same time, one of the unintended consequences is a unification through the cloud, through technology, an enabler in that respect. So
I would agree with you that it could be that we're only halfway through it if you look at it through a global lens.
Yes.
Because we live in what we arrogantly refer to as the first world, right?
Yes.
And but other places in our world are far behind from a technology standpoint and dependent upon those of us in more advanced and fortunate countries for generosity in order to get through this. And it feels like some of that is just happening, right? Just starting to occur. And it indeed may be another year before that's truly globally been impacted for us. So, well, Mark, it's always good to be with you, my friend. And I have missed you. So, and look forward to when we can walk the conference floor again together someday, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Likewise, Carl. Thank you very much for having me on today. That's really appreciated.
And to our audience, thank you once again for being a part of the Connected Enterprise. And until we meet again, stay connected.